Okay, so there's a huge trade dispute brewing between the world's two largest democracies. And what's at stake here is so much more than just billions of dollars. We're talking about a critical strategic partnership that took decades to build. So what's really driving this high-stakes standoff?
It all starts with this one single number, 50%. That's the massive total tariff the U.S. has slapped on Indian goods. And just like that, it makes India one of the most heavily taxed trading partners of the United States, putting their entire economic relationship right on the edge.
So you're probably asking, why? Why 50%? Well, to get the answer, we have to look at the justification coming straight from the White House. President Trump directly tied these tariffs to India's major purchases of Russian oil, basically accusing the country of helping to fund Russia's war in Ukraine.
But to really get a handle on how serious this is, we need to understand what's truly at risk. You see, the US-India relationship, it's about so much more than just trade. It's a strategic alliance that's been built up over decades of cooperation.
For years, I mean years, Washington has viewed New Delhi as an absolutely essential partner to balance out China's growing power in the Indo-Pacific. This partnership has meant deep defense ties, sharing intelligence, even joint military exercises. It's really been a cornerstone of U.S. strategy in Asia.
Now this chart, this shows you a really key piece of the economic puzzle. While their trade together has been booming, there's this persistent gap. India has consistently sold way more to the U.S. than it buys, creating a trade surplus that for President Trump has been a major sticking point for a long time.
And that brings us right to the heart of the problem. A super fast series of tariff moves that have put this entire partnership under a whole lot of strain.
This whole thing escalated incredibly fast. On July 31st, the U.S. hit India with an initial 25% tariff. But then, just a week later, on August 6th, the administration piled on another 25%, this time specifically citing the Russian oil issue. That brought the total to a crippling 50%.
And look, these tariffs aren't just abstract numbers on a page. They are a direct hit on some of India's most important labor-intensive industries. We're talking billions of dollars in trade for things like textiles, jewelry, and machinery. That puts millions of jobs and livelihoods on the line.
So let's zoom in on that official reason, because it all comes back to one of the thorniest geopolitical issues out there right now: the war in Ukraine and India's long, complicated relationship with Russia.
And here it is. This is the flashpoint. Since the war started, Russia has become India's #1 supplier of crude oil, making up a massive 35% of its total imports. Now, India says it started buying this cheaper Russian oil to make sure it had energy security for its 1.4 billion people, especially after its usual suppliers started sending more to Europe.
So as you can imagine, this has led to a pretty tense war of words. The U.S. says India is bankrolling Russia's war, but India has pushed back hard, pointing out what it sees as a major double standard. New Delhi notes that the U.S. itself and its European allies are still buying strategic Russian goods like uranium for power plants or palladium for cars.
India's official response has been sharp, to say the least. In a formal statement, their Ministry of External Affairs called the U.S. tariffs unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable. They've made it crystal clear they feel targeted and have promised to do whatever it takes to protect their national interests.
So what are the actual real-world consequences of this whole standoff? Well, the fallout goes way beyond just diplomatic statements, and it's already making waves across the Indian economy.
For those industries in India that are getting hit the hardest, we're talking apparel, shrimp, leather. The outlook is, frankly, pretty grim. Trade experts are predicting that their exports to the U.S. could just plummet by a devastating 40 to 50%. That's a potential catastrophe for those businesses and other people they employ.
An internal assessment from the Indian government paints an even bigger picture. It estimates that nearly $64 billion worth of goods that they send to the U.S. are now at a serious competitive disadvantage. That just makes it way harder for Indian companies to compete with rivals from places like Vietnam or Bangladesh that don't face these high tariffs.
And the tension isn't just about goods and shipping containers. It's spilling over into other really important areas. Take immigration, for example. During President Trump's first term, we saw stricter policies around the H-1B visa, a visa that tons of Indian tech professionals rely on. This led to lower approval rates and higher costs for India's giant IT industry. It's a pretty clear sign that this friction goes beyond just trade.
But, the economic cost, as big as it is, might not even be the worst part of this. The biggest risk, the real danger, could be the strategic fallout, the potential for a partnership that took decades of careful work to build to just unravel.
You have analysts like Richard Rosso at the Center for Strategic and International Studies who are basically sounding the alarm. They warn that this aggressive tariff approach is quickly draining what they call the reservoir of trust, that goodwill that is the absolute foundation of the U.S.-India relationship.
So here's the bottom line, the really crucial point. This is not just some trade spat. It directly threatens long-term security cooperation. When the U.S. and India are fighting, it weakens their ability to work together on shared challenges, especially their main goal of ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific.
And all of this leaves us with the ultimate question. The whole world is watching to see if this immense economic pressure is going to push both sides back to the table to hammer out a new deal, or if the damage that's being done right now will permanently break one of the most important strategic partnerships of the 21st century. The answer, whatever it is going to have consequences that echo far, far beyond just trade figures.